I'm a 7-foot lizard.
That's great, though. Maybe you should. Can he take my role as the narrator for this weekend?
So is it too robotic? Like, is it crackling and crazy?
It sounds like a kidnapper voice. Does that make sense? Yeah. It sounds like you've kidnapped my son, and I have to pay you $millions to get him back.
It's the ransom voice.
That's exactly what that is. It's the ransom voice. So.
Can you hear me now, though, in my regular voice? Is that not crackling and crazy?
Yeah, it's okay now.
And when I turn this on, is it not crackling?
That's good.
Back to the ransom.
I almost need one of these just to do all the different voices of characters, because I'm not going to be able to pull off female voices in this.
Oh my god, this program I have actually has a male to female voice bit too.
Really? Oh, yeah. That's funny.
But if you're okay with the deep voice just when my character says it, then I can use it as long as it's clear.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I think it's funny. I think it's great.
Okay, good.
So,
let's rush then.
Okay. So, all of you are essentially on your way, one way, shape, or form, to the meeting of the Great Houses. Okay, for a little bit of background, just to catch you guys up, in case you didn't read everything I sent 5 or 6 times, like I get the feeling at least one of you did.
Yep.
So essentially, the Great Houses of Malibor exist as a kind of union, is what they are. They're an unofficial union, but in a lot of ways, they basically are official. In the Malibor system, it is a heavy mining and resource system. That's essentially what they built their trade craft upon. So the miners, the unions essentially, and everything that's associated with them is massively powerful. So the power brokers of the system, the senators, as you might have them, or high council people, they have power to a point. If the great houses oppose them in any way, they lose. So they do whatever they can to appease them. But it's politics, and politics is dirty, as we all know. So everybody at every level, if you know politics and unions and all this sort of stuff, like what kind of went on in the historic days of here on Earth, you get a vague idea of what the Malibor system kind of runs on.
Jimmy Hoffa and the Teamsters.
Yeah, it's very heavy in this system. And the second step to this is there is a great house that controls everything. So I've got a list of them here of basically each of the great houses. There's 11 of them, conveniently odd number, just in case they don't talk. But essentially anything that happens in the system that one of these houses will control. They'll control the people involved in it, and generally controlling the people means controlling any of the money and stuff that moves through it. So we have, and I'm not going to give you all the characters' names right off the bat. You will run into these guys and gals. But essentially every house is essentially an extended family, and the leader of that house is the parent. So female, it's a mother. If it's a male, it's a father, and that's basically how they're called. So so you have essentially the Hydraulics Guild, and that essentially is all movement, plumbing, fuel, that sort of stuff. Basically anything that has to do with liquid movement around the system. So the names, I just came up with them as we went, so live with it, so unfortunately. You have the Burner Guild, that's processing, smelting, that sort of stuff. They basically do all of the resource processing of the things in the system. And they are the lead of the great houses at the current moment. So they are the top house, the one that is the center, if you will, of all of them. Makes the final decision of that's the Burner Guild.
Head house.
Yep. At this moment. So they're the one that if there's a tie, they break it. Essentially their decision becomes the decision. But only in the case of a tie. There's the Loaders Guild, that tends to be what you'd expect, forklifts, very specifically freight movement and loading of vehicles, unloading of mine carts, that sort of stuff. There is an Electricians Guild that is wiring electricity. They're also computers, so anything that runs on the wires, so slicing, that sort of stuff, all falls into their purview. So they're, in a sense, your electricity and software guys. The Transport Guild, pretty straightforward. They move the stuff among like essentially large distances. So the loaders move things around in short distances. Transport is your long haul guys, all right? Teamsters in a lot of ways, if you want to look at it like that. You have a Storage Guild. These are the warehouses. They're the ones that control the property of all this stuff. So once it stops moving, they control it. They're the ones that keep track of the inventory. They're the ones that can say something is there or isn't there at their discretion, if you get the idea. There is a Security Guild. They essentially are the police force for the Malibor system. They're not the military, but they are essentially an arm of the military. And they have huge sway in the military because most of their people are essentially from the military at one point in their lives, or will end up there if they're young in the guild. So that's the Security Guild. They'll be the ones that typically provide security across most of these worlds. You have two mining guilds. One is ore and one is gas. So you have two separate guilds for each of those commodities that come out of the system. So one is essentially all the ores, minerals, solid material, and one is the gas and liquids essentially that gets actually mined. So these guys control the on the ground people. You have the Technicians Guilds. They're essentially the people that fix the stuff. If it's a vehicle that needs to be fixed, that's them. Your mechanics essentially is where the technicians are. And then last but not least is the Trader Guild. That's the money. So they're your bankers, they're your shops, they're that sort of stuff. They all fall under the purview of the Trader Guild. Gotcha. So that's your 11 guilds. You may or may not run into all of them at some point. We'll see. But that is as it stands right now. And they, as a big family is, there is obviously some mingling between these, but at the upper echelons of these things, they're very distinct entities. And of course, power plays of stuff always goes on. That's just the nature of how all this stuff works. They do not have out and out wars. These are not gangs. They do work out. It's all about money. So they're not mafia houses. If that makes sense to you. There will be skirmishes and that sort of stuff, but it's never like an out and out war. There's no great godfather. None of that crazy sort of stuff is going on. It's a fairly peaceful when it comes down to it. So basically, what has happened is the Empire has come into the system because it is a heavy resource system. Hey, it's on the outer rim. We probably don't need to mess with it too much, but holy crap, something just happened on the other side of the galaxy. We probably need some more resources. So
right.
They have a presence in the area. Never had a serious military presence. It was always just a vague kind of, oh, we know the system exists. We leave it on its own. We don't bother with it. It doesn't hurt anybody. Now they need resources, and the Malibor system is one of the heaviest resource mining areas, and that's what they're built for, and essentially this portion of the galaxy. So they have extreme interests in what happens there. So they've come into the system, and they know, because of the way this whole thing is structured, that they have to appease the great houses. And they can't out and out take. They just can't come in and take. It's too dangerous because they don't control anything. You'd have, a system-wide set of planets with a very, well-structured balance of who controls everything. So they're playing a very political game right now. They've come in and they've made peace of a sort with the High Council, which is your true politicians who have nothing. They don't actually do anything except for politic, in a sense. They, they make laws, they do this stuff, but it's all in effect, just kind of there for appearances because the great houses keep track of most of this stuff on their own. So the Empire has come into the system and made friends essentially with the High Council, with the hope that the High Council will kind of spread this goodwill down. That's the front end. And what's come up of late is people started disappearing from backwaters, in a sense. At first, it was not really noticed. It's millions upon billions of people live in this system, so a handful of people start disappearing. It's not a big deal, but it's still there, if that makes sense. On the lower ends, it's like, man, what's his name disappeared. There's no reason for it. Like his old lady wasn't looking for him. Nothing like that was going on. Just a strange kind of, that was weird.
Mhm.
Well, you get enough of these kind of together and people start to get paranoid. They start to ask questions. Hey, this was never happening before the Empire showed up. Well, it was all just murmur, all just hearsay, conspiracy theory, until one person disappeared, and a day later, a Trandoshan was found to be selling that person's possessions at a local pawn shop not far away from where the person was last seen, essentially. This, of course, pissed everybody off. They said, here it is, here's evidence. Of course, the Trandoshan was arrested immediately and taken back for interrogation. Under interrogation, the Trandoshan eventually relinquished the fact that he has been working for the Empire secretly, covertly, to do exactly what everybody has been expecting, essentially fulfilling the truth of these conspiracy theories. The Empire is actually here to take people technically skilled as miners, as machinists, that sort of thing, out of the system. For what purpose, they don't really know. They've not really paid attention that much to galactic politics. They only know what's happening. So they're concerned. That, of course, pissed off the great houses. And they said, you know what? All right, let's settle this once and for all. We haven't done this in a couple of centuries, so it's a good opportunity for us to all meet face to face in one room. They obviously know each other, but they never really coalesce as a one body and normally. So they said, you know what? We need to show essentially a united front. So we will bring the great houses together, and we will meet to discuss this, and essentially act as a court / for you Earth version Senate hearing of what's happening. So that's where we're at this point. Each of you has found a way to make it to this meeting. It is obviously very exclusive. There's only so much seating to be available at this sort of thing. It hasn't happened in a few centuries, so in a sense, it's a celebrity affair as well. You got a lot of people who want to be seen there, making a show. It's a political scene as much as it is actually trying to get something done. So this is taking place on the Terran Trade Outpost, which is on a small moon on the very far out planet, the last planet in the system, which is I didn't name the planets; they don't matter at this point. But the moon is Carson. Not that that's going to be massively important, but it's there, and it sits. This planet, the sixth planet in the Malibor system, the last one, sits just outside of what's known as the Malibor Gate Station. So that's essentially the checkpoint that lets you into the rest of the system. The fifth planet inside houses the military stronghold. You don't need all this unless you want to take notes. Called the Garston Citadel, and that's essentially their military strong point. So the fifth planet is their military gate, essentially, into the system. There is at all times a military presence there. They check and recheck everything that moves in and out of the system. It's military based, but they have great house people obviously on site because it's very important. They want to know what comes in and out of the system so that it can be tagged and paid for so that everybody gets their piece. So the reason the trade outpost has become such a big deal is because it sits outside of the Malibor Gate. So the houses still have control, but their presence isn't omnipresent. There are places you can go to make deals, to get things traded that isn't going to get a piece taken away by the great houses. So that basically the great houses said, you know what, we're going to have this on the trade outpost. That way our presence is known there, but at the same time we are far enough away from the center of our system that we can distinguish ourselves from the Great Council, from the High Council of Malibor. It's not a political entity. This is essentially they're separating themselves completely by stepping outside the gate, in a sense. The meeting itself is taking place in a large room, essentially, that is built in the remnants of the original colony ship that was brought to the moon Carson millennia ago. It's called Old Terra, and that's the name. That's essentially the hints where the name of the outpost came from. They basically used it as its original purpose. We landed it. We realized we couldn't terraform this, so we moved to other planets. They left the colony ship there. Eventually, stuff just started ramshackling onto it. Lean-tos. Oh, you know what? Let's just throw this bunch of containers here and add onto it, make it bigger. So it's essentially been swallowed over the years. But it's still, in a sense, a reverential piece of this station. It's no longer the center of the station, but it's still kind of revered as everybody. So over the past few weeks, ever since the decision was made to join the houses, or I guess have the houses come together for this meeting, they have been retrofitting this. They've been cleaning it up, making it essentially look pristine again. It had obviously in a very, very bad state of disrepair. So they've cleaned it up over the past few weeks. Everything's nice, clean, because they're going to have dignitaries and stuff coming in. They don't want it to be a junk heap, essentially. So that is where the meeting is taking place. And you guys are basically on your way there in one fashion or another. So I guess it's your move at this point. There's one, basically everybody's funneling in through one door. I'm going to send you guys an email with the overview of it. My very crappily sketched. Uh-oh, you're breaking up again.
Yeah, you were just for a second there too. I might be on my end. Can you hear me clearly or no?
No. All right, I'm going to send this goofy looking picture to you guys. All right, this is a very badly drawn top-down view of the meeting room that you guys will be running into.